guys, it's Amelia. Okay. First things first. At first I wasn't sure I wanted to record this video, much less put it on the internet. But when I decided to make a YouTube channel and I decided to document mine and my husband's journey to trying to conceive our first baby, I told myself that I wanted to be transparent and open and candid as much as possible. So even if that meant letting the world know about something bad that happened during the process. So with that being said, I'm sure you can already tell by this video what it's going to be about. So I had what is called a chemical pregnancy. And what that is basically is a really early miscarriage. And it occurs just shortly after implantation. So you guys know already that my husband and I are trying to conceive our first baby. And I started testing, taking pregnancy tests as soon as I want to say 11 days past ovulation, which is really early. I hadn't even gotten to my missed period yet. So I kept getting negatives, and that was fine. I wasn't getting discouraged. And then finally the day of my missed period came, and my period was nowhere to be found, which is not normal for me. My cycles are really regular. I'm either a day early or right on time, always. And so that was kind of like a red flag for me. I thought, well, this isn't really normal, you know, maybe I'll take a pregnancy test. So I took one that morning, but I took one of those HCG strips from Amazon that you can buy pretty cheap. And I saw a very, very, very faint line. So faint that I almost thought to myself that my eyes were just trying to play tricks on me. So still, I thought maybe, you know, this could be it. And then I actually, coincidentally, had a OBGYN appointment that same day, just for my annual physical. And I told the nurse that I was 1 day late on my period, and she said, well, do you want to take a pregnancy test? And I said, sure. So I did just the regular urine test, and she actually said that it was negative. I thought, okay, that's totally fine. You know, she said, wait until, I want to say 5 days past your missed period, something like that. So I, once again, didn't really think much of it. So Friday comes around, which is the next day after my missed period, and it still hadn't come. I didn't test because I didn't want to keep getting all these negatives. Saturday rolls around, and once again, my period isn't here. So I got anxious and I took a pregnancy test. And as you can see, I played it in the first clip because I kind of wanted you to see like my emotions and what I was thinking, like what was going through my head at the time, because I did film live pregnancy tests because I wanted to upload them had, you know, I gotten a positive pregnancy. I did take the video on Saturday of the pregnancy test, and it did come out positive, as you saw in the clip. And I was obviously very excited, very happy. I thought, this can't be, you know, it can't be correct, because I kept getting all these negatives. And so the initial shock set in, and then I got overly excited and happy, and my husband was outside pulling some weeds, and I went and showed him the test, and his face just lit up. I don't think I've ever seen his face light up like that. And it was definitely a very exciting day. And Sunday rolls around, which is the next day, and I wanted to take another test just to be sure. So I took one of those first response pregnancy tests with the lines. And again, I could only see a very faint line. Nothing sure was coming up on the test. So we went out and we bought the digital first response this time, and it was positive. It said, or it had the smiley face. And so I was like, oh, okay, whew. Take a deep breath, still pregnant. And throughout this time I was having light spotting. So I was just kind of thinking that that was the implantation bleed, because I had read that some women do get a little bit spotty because that's the implantation happening. So I didn't think anything of it. So Monday comes around and I actually have to go out of town for work. So I am currently in Sacramento, which is 3 hours away from home, at a workshop for work. And throughout that whole workshop, which was until 4 p.m., everything was great. I actually had called my OB earlier that day to set up some appointments for during the pregnancy. So everything was totally fine. And then when I got back to the hotel from the workshop, I noticed a lot of bleeding and it didn't seem normal. And so immediately I was like, no. Like, I had read all about, miscarrying and everything that can happen. And so when I saw that bleeding, I just thought that it just couldn't be normal. And so I immediately called my husband on the phone and I said, I'm bleeding a lot. And he was kind of silent at first. And we both kind of knew that it wasn't normal. So I called my OB back at around 4:30 p.m. and I spoke to a nurse, and she said, it sounds like you're having a miscarriage, because it was heavy, it was bright red, not something normal. And so I remember thinking, yeah, she's probably right. And I kind of given up hope, I guess. She said sometimes you can bleed during pregnancy, but it's not exactly normal. And so she said, go ahead and take a blood test. I'm going to send over some paperwork and we're going to measure your HCG levels. And she said, I want you to take the blood test as soon as possible, which for me was the next day because I was out of town. As soon as possible, and then after that, take the same blood test 48 hours later and make sure it's exactly 48 hours. So I did, and by this time I was still bleeding pretty heavily, passing some bigger sized clots than what would normally be a period. For me, I had a little bit of cramping on the second day of bleeding. It wasn't anything real bad. Nothing that sort of made me go get it checked out. So those were my immediate symptoms, was the heavy bleeding, the passing of the bigger clots, and the little bit of cramping. So on Thursday, I took the second HCG blood test. And then Friday rolls around and I didn't hear anything back. And then Monday came, because they were closed over the weekend. And she called and she was like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Has the bleeding stopped? What's going on? And I can tell in the sound of her voice that she wasn't going to give me good news. So I had already known anyway that it wasn't going to be good news. I mean, to bleed for that long when you got positive pregnancy tests isn't normal. So I kind of already knew that she was going to give me bad news. So she said that the first day my HCG levels measured at 20, which is kind of low. And then the test that I took 48 hours later, they measured at only 2, which they consider a negative pregnancy test. So I was not surprised. She kind of just reassured me, because you can bleed during early pregnancy for other reasons. So I guess in a way, I'm kind of glad that the HCG levels measured low, because I didn't really want to go through anything else medically, like an ectopic pregnancy or, I don't know, something worse. I mean, there are other reasons for bleeding during early pregnancy, but so I was only about 4 weeks and 3 days, according to like the apps, the pregnancy apps, and according to when I had my last period. So that's very early, so early that a ultrasound wouldn't detect anything. It wouldn't even detect like a sac. So that's why they call it chemical pregnancies, because it happens like right after implantation and nothing ever really develops. So I think that it would have been worse had it been later on in the pregnancy, like at, I don't know, 8 weeks or more. But don't get me wrong, I was and am still very sad about it, because it's not a fun thing to go through. Because you get that positive pregnancy test and you're so elated, and then just not even a couple days later, you get a lot of heavy bleeding. And that's kind of the worst of it all. And I'll be a little bit gory with you guys, but seeing that amount of blood almost pouring from your body is heartbreaking, because you know what it is and you know what's going on. So yeah. So there's no real known cause of an early miscarriage. I was reading that it could be because it was either bad sperm or bad egg, and it just didn't implant correctly. But nobody really knows. So I can't say what I'll do differently during, you know, this whole journey. I do know, I did read that women are more fertile after a miscarriage. So maybe when we try again, it will stick this time. Also, I've been reading, I didn't talk to my doctor about this, but I've been reading that there's no real time frame to when you can start trying to conceive again. Some places said that a good 3 months after a miscarriage is better, but there's no real conclusions to that, I guess. And a lot of women are saying that they got pregnant immediately following a miscarriage, just within a couple weeks following that. I do know that doctors recommend that you wait until your next period, just so that it's easier for them to gauge when your due date is, because they go off of your first day of your last period. So also following a miscarriage, you are not, or it's recommended to not have sex within the first couple of weeks, because your cervix can still be open and you can still you have like an increased risk of infections. So I think our plan is to wait for that first period to come back, and then once it does, obviously keep track of my ovulation, and then try again. So I'm not going to wait that 3 months. I'm just going to wait a couple more weeks until I receive my period. It's hard to wait, honestly, because like I'm so impatient, and we both really want this as soon as possible. So it's definitely hard to be patient throughout this process, but I want to make sure that my body is healed, both physically and emotionally. So soon we will be trying again. I will obviously keep you guys updated, like I said that I would. Also, I just want to note that if you're going through the same thing same experience and it sounds like you're having the same symptoms as myself, don't take my word for it, because it can be something entirely different. So definitely talk to your doctor if you're experiencing the same things. I'm not a doctor. I'm just letting you guys know what I went through during the chemical pregnancy and the early miscarriage, and the symptoms that I had throughout the whole process. So I think that is all that I want to say to you guys. Once again, I really wanted to be open and honest with you during this whole process. And if this video helps somebody else, at least just one person, then I've pretty much done my job. And I've done what I wanted to do by making this video and by posting it online. Anyway, thanks you guys for watching. Hopefully we have some better luck in the future, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.